the incoming Republican congressman who was caught lying about his background is now admitting to it. In interviews with conservative news outlets here in New York City, Congressman-elect George Santos defended his record and committed to serving his full term. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns has more.
A confession from the Republican congressman-elect.
If I disappointed anyone by resume embellishment, I'm sorry.
Speaking out directly for the first time about allegations he fabricated his resume and life story, George Santos acknowledged to a New York radio host that he told a string of lies about his education and employment history.
And I'm not going to make excuses for this, but a lot of people overstate in their resumes or twist a little bit or ingratiate themselves. I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that.
In another interview with the New York Post, Santos admitted he did not have degrees from Baruch College and NYU, as he had claimed. I didn't graduate from any institution of higher learning. I'm embarrassed and sorry. We do stupid things in life. He also admitted he never worked directly for Goldman Sachs or Citigroup, despite frequently touting the credential while campaigning.
When I first started in my career at Citigroup, I was told, oh, you're a really smart guy.
Now, Santos says a company he worked for, called Linkbridge, did business with those Wall Street firms. Santos also addressed scrutiny around his claims of Jewish heritage. On his campaign website, in a section now removed, he recalled his grandparents fleeing Jewish persecution during World War II. I am Catholic, he told the Post, because I learned my maternal family had a Jewish background. I said I was Jew-ish. And he said he lied about owning 13 properties, admitting he lives with his sister. But questions about his finances remain, including $700,000 he reported to have loaned his campaign, a claim that went unchecked in the radio interview Monday.
The $700,000 you put into the election, was that your money?
That is the money that I paid myself through my company, the Volder Organization.
Understood.
Now, despite the admission, Santos said he won't be deterred from serving his full term in Congress and says he intends to deliver on the promises he made during the campaign. He is slated to be sworn in next week.
Okay, Caitlin, let's get into this. He says he has done stupid things in life. Hey, who hasn't? However, did Congressman-elect Santos explain why he felt the need to embellish or lie about his background?
Well, that's one of the interesting things about these interviews, Deborah, is that he didn't really explain why he did this. He admitted to fabricating his resume, where he went to school, where he worked, and some other aspects, but he really didn't explain why he did it in the first place. And in fact, in that radio interview with a pretty friendly host, he spent much of the interview actually going after the media and slamming the New York Times for digging into this, because remember, originally they had reported these allegations that they had deeply reported that he really, embellished his resume, and that turns out to be true. And so, not a lot of explanation, but it seems that he is trying to say, look, I made this up. I made a mistake. Let's move forward. But as I mentioned in the piece, there are still a lot of questions remaining, particularly about his finances.
Absolutely, Caitlin. And I could just imagine that if I lied about where I went to school or what I did at CBS, they'd be like, hey, get out of here. I would face some repercussions. So could Congressman-elect Santos face any kind of repercussions for this lying?
It's a good question, because there are a couple of different components of this. One, the lies about his resume. There isn't much legal exposure there, but there could be when it comes to his finances, when it comes to what he put on federal documents in terms of what he submitted to the Federal Election Commission. So there are multiple components of this, which is why this story will likely continue. But it's not as if, you're going to be kicked out for lying. Now, this is where it kind of gets tricky, because in other circumstances, you may have future colleagues calling him out, criticizing him. On the Republican side, you haven't really heard much criticism of him. In fact, Republican leaders continue to remain silent, and that's because, as we've talked about, Deborah, Kevin McCarthy, who hopes to be Speaker, needs every last vote of support that he can get next week when Congress comes back to be able to be Speaker. So there are going to be questions about what happens next, but by all accounts, he is going to be sworn in next week.
It's just very interesting because did he need to really embellish these things? I mean, it's just, there's so many questions. I hate to end this with saying more questions than answers, but that really does sum this up. And I'm on the edge of my seat trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Caitlin, thank you so much for your deep reporting on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.